We all want to have a good experience when we're staying at hotels. We want friendly service, clean rooms, and nice conditions. But not everything always turns out that way. So today we're going to talk about when you should complain at hotels and what your strategy should be. Hi, my name is Sean. I'm the co-host of the Credit Card BS podcast. Due to different travel schedules, my other co-host, Sherwin, he's not going to be here today. He will be back next week, though. And so, today is just going to be a solo episode. I hope you still enjoy it, though. So we're going to talk about when you should complain at a hotel. Because I think a lot of times you'll see two totally different ends of the spectrum of when people think you should complain at hotels. You do have one blogger who runs a segment called Compensation Clinic, where they basically talk about all the different times they need compensation at hotels. Now, some people don't like that segment because it kind of seems to encourage complaining at hotels too frequently. Some people think it's fine because, these are a lot of times like legitimate issues that they're complaining about. So the question is when should you complain? How do you determine when to complain? I think a lot of it depends on first of all, how luxurious the hotel is, right? If you're staying at a Park Hyatt or a Ritz-Carlton or a St. Regis or a Waldorf Astoria or an Edition or something like that, you're staying at a high-tier luxury hotel, right? You're supposed to have a high-tier luxurious experience. The bar for complaint at a place like that is significantly lower than it would be at something like a Courtyard or a Hyatt Place or a Hyatt House or a Holiday Inn, okay? Because think about what the standard expectation is there. When I'm staying at a Courtyard, what do I want? What am I supposed to be getting out of it? What does that brand mean? I'm supposed to be getting a comfortable, clean room with friendly service, but not much more, right? Maybe a gym. That's basically it, right? It's a basic hotel. Holiday Inns, Courtyard, Hyatt Place, those are basic hotels. You're going after consistency. You're going after a clean, comfortable room and the staff being nice to you, right? That's really all you can truly expect. So if, for example, an amenity that they don't necessarily need to have, let's say they have a pool and the pool's out for maintenance, it's tougher to complain on in that case because, that's not part of the standard full expectation. Whereas if I'm at a Ritz-Carlton hotel or a Regent hotel and there's a swimming pool at the hotel and let's say it's out for maintenance and I wasn't told before my stay, that's a way easier time to complain because that's, arguably that's part of what I was supposed to be paying for on a fundamental level, right? A full-service luxury hotel usually has a swimming pool. And if these full-service luxury hotels had a pool and it was out, I would have a pretty good right to complain because that's part of what I was paying for. When you're paying for a luxury hotel, you're paying for a luxury, comfortable experience. You're paying for that service. I think this is something a lot of people miss when someone wants to complain at a luxury hotel, even if it doesn't seem to be, let's say there's something wrong with the stay. Maybe it's not the biggest issue in the world, but it certainly, might be a minor issue. A lot of people just go, let it go, it doesn't matter, right? And I think that's a fine mindset to have. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But I do think there is something to be said of the fact that when you're paying for that hotel, you're paying for the level of service. It's almost like an insurance policy you're buying if something goes wrong. Just like if I'm at a high-end restaurant and if my meal turns out bad, right? The expectation is that they're going to take it back, probably replace it with something else, and then comp that dish. And that might seem unreasonable, right? Because the only minimum bar should probably be just replacing the dish. But when you're at a really high-tier place, you're paying really inflated prices. Part of those prices is like an insurance policy or for the service, really, right? So you're expecting a high degree of service. So I think that's one thing. The first thing is really just know what type of brand segment you're staying at and kind of set your expectations based on that. Because if you're staying at, a high tier versus a low tier versus a mid tier, it really does change what is fair to complain about. I think another thing, moving on a bit is I think when you are complaining at a hotel, let's say you're complaining at a hotel, right? There was an issue. Maybe it was that the service has been really slow, okay, or something at breakfast, right? Let's say the service has just been absurdly slow, right? You're sitting there 20 minutes to get your check kind of thing. and you're going to complain to the front desk or whatever. I think it's always better to maintain a constructive rather than a destructive attitude. So I think I don't personally myself, like if I'm having an issue, I don't want to go to the staff and start complaining and say, this is awful, this is awful, this is awful. You need to fix this, this, and this. I would rather do it from a realm of, look, a friendlier tone, if that makes sense. Hey, I've been enjoying my stay. It's a nice room. I try to give something good about the hotel first. But this one thing has been detracting from my experience, and it kind of has been an issue. Is there something we could do about that? And then this would also maybe be a time where you throw in kind of what you're hoping they could do, right? Because a complaint, usually the goal of it, right, partly is to inform the hotel so they can improve on the operations. And then also is partly usually to receive either a fixing of the issue or some compensation for the issue, depending on the severity. So that would be, hey, the service has been really slow at breakfast. It's taken me like 20 minutes every day to get the check. It takes forever for them to get the food. Would it be possible to have one of my breakfast comps as compensation? Because it really has detracted from the experience. That's an example of fair, logical compensation, right? I've been paying for these breakfasts at, hotel prices, so they're all been inflated. And assuming, this, of course, you don't have free breakfast. And I haven't been fully enjoying myself. So my request is to receive some sort of compensation back as like a way to make me feel better about paying all this money for a breakfast that has been substandard, right? And so I think having this constructive attitude of I'm not attacking you as a person, right? I know it's not because the person you're complaining to, right, very, very rarely is going to be the actual person committing the infraction, if you will, right? If there's a waiter that's, let's say, rude to me, very rarely would I actually go to that waiter directly and complain. I mean, maybe I would, but most likely not. I would probably go to a manager or, someone else to complain who wasn't the actual person, because one, in my head, right, if this person didn't care enough about me to not be nice to me in the first place, why are they really going to start caring about me now once I've complained? I'd rather complain to someone else who might be a bit more understanding. And so I think it's important, so you're not, when you complain, you shouldn't be attacking the person because it's not their fault, right? It's they're just one individual. Now, there are cases, of course, in which it could be, to some degree, the fault of the individual you are complaining to. An extreme example, but let's say there's a hotel and it's just really poorly run, right? Just across the board. The hotel is just not well run. The staff are unhappy. There's just a seeming blanket of issues, right? And if, let's say, you end up complaining to the general manager, now there's a very real possibility that is the fault of the general manager, right? Their job is to maintain the operations of the hotel. And if there's a seeming just nonstop barrage of issues, they are, partially responsible, of course. And again, I think even if it is their fault, I think people there's this fear of complaining, right? There's this stigma of I don't want to be a Karen, right? I don't want to go to the hotel, start yelling at them, and you feel bad, right? Because it's you sure they deal with a lot of people doing that. And so I think that's why making sure to maintain this disposition of, I'm not angry at you as a person, right? I'm dissatisfied with my experience for X, Y, Z and reasons. This is what I think you could do to resolve it. I think that's also a good thing, is have a good understanding of what you want the hotel to do to resolve your complaint. Because if I go to a hotel and I complain about an issue to them and I say, what can you do about it? And if I have something in mind, for example, let's say it was look, I got in late. They took forever to get my room ready, and my room, way past the check-in time, and my room just isn't that good. It's not good. It's kind of poorly maintained. Maybe it even feels a little dirty, right? If I say, what could you do about that? They might reply, oh, we can send a cleaning team to your room right now and clean it for you extra deep, right? Extra nice. And I might go, okay, then maybe that could be a good solution for me. Maybe it's not though, right? Maybe it's I just paid all this money for this hotel. Maybe it's a luxury hotel. They didn't let me check until late. My room's kind of dirty. This is kind of not a great experience. I'm only here 2-3 nights. I want a nicer room. So I should have asked for, would you be able to upgrade my room as compensation, right? And that's fair, actually. That's a very fair thing to ask for if you're being reasonable about it, right? Because cleaning the room, right, isn't compensation. That's just the minimum bar of what should have already been done. Yes, they are de facto resolving the solution, but not until after the issue had already occurred. So if you're, I hope that makes sense. If you're like, I hope people understand that a bit, because resolving the issue doesn't bring everything back to normal. It only does what they should have done to begin with. That's the point of compensation. The point of compensation is to offset the negative thing that had happened to you, so you are now not bothered by it, right? So the idea is like, okay, look, my dinner wasn't good last night. So then the hotel goes, okay, we're going to comp last night's dinner, and we're going to comp one more night's dinner. And then I'm, as a guest, going, you know what? Like, that was worth it for me. Like, I'm not upset anymore because, yes, I didn't have a great dinner last night, but now I didn't have to pay for it, and I get one more dinner for free. So it ended up working out for me. It makes you feel good as a guest. And on the hotel's end, right, they're not paying retail price for these comps, of course. If a hotel comps you a $200 dinner, that's not costing them $200, because the retail cost for them to deliver that is a small fraction of that price. And for them, it's worth it to keep you happy as a guest, because hotels, especially luxury hotels, live off of perception, and they live off of reviews. So if I, as a guest, didn't have a good experience at the hotel, and I begin to go complain to all my friends and family and on Reddit and on TripAdvisor how much of a bad experience I had on this hotel, really think about this. Think about how one prominent bad review can seriously damage a hotel. Think about how, if all it takes is one review to make one person not go to the hotel, and how much money the hotel has lost because of that one bad review. I would argue that if a person leaves a very poor review, there's a very decent chance that it convinces at least one guest to not go. And that one guest costs the hotel a significant loss of money now, because they lost a guest that they otherwise would have had. And so that's why compensation and high service standards are so critical to hotels, because at most places around the world, you have an abundance of choice. In any city hotel, any city in the world, in most resort destinations around the world, you're not stuck to just like a few hotel options. And so if there's a Ritz-Carlton that just had this awful review of unfriendly staff and unclean rooms, and alternatively, there's a Park Hyatt in the same city that doesn't have that, where would most people stay? Most people would pick the hotel that didn't have the bad reviews. So that's why it's so important for these hotels to maintain a high degree of service. And so that's why I think I would not feel bad if you are asking for compensation as a guest. As long as you're being reasonable about it, and you're not frivolously complaining for the sole purpose of gaining compensation, it's totally fine to, and it's actually, I would argue, better. It is selfish to not ask for compensation in some cases. And why would it be selfish to not ask for compensation? Because you're making your feelings above that of the hotel operations. And like, just hold on for a second here. What I mean by this is, I have a bad experience at a hotel. One hotel I didn't have a good experience at, is St. Regis Shenzhen. Wasn't my favorite hotel. Okay. Smelled like cigarettes in the hallways. The rooms were a bit not maintained well. The service wasn't the best. Okay. Now, I made a mistake. I should have, when I wasn't having a good experience, brought these issues up to the staff. And there's a few reasons I should have done this. Because one, they didn't necessarily, now I will say, like, they should have, obviously those things were not acceptable issues, right? The room should have been better maintained. It shouldn't have smelled like cigarettes or whatever. But at the same time, they didn't know I wasn't having a good experience, because how were they supposed to know? So I should have been honest with them and brought the issues to their attention and seen what, they could have offered as compensation or to make the stay better. Because now I tell people about that hotel and say, I didn't have a great experience. But maybe if I had brought it up to the staff, the issues I was having, it would have given them a chance to provide some sort of compensation to make my stay better. And maybe it would have, one, made my stay way better, because maybe they would have, moved me to a floor that, didn't have the issues. And maybe that might make my room was just unlucky. Maybe all the other rooms are great and I just got an unlucky room, right? And so one, it would have made my stay better. But two, it would have given the hotel a chance to improve. Because telling the hotel directly an issue is the best way you can make the hotel improve. Because if you start giving them bad reviews, you're harming their business, right? And yes, like they still might improve in the long run because of it, but telling someone directly that works with the hotel staff is going to be your best way to make sure the hotel improves as fast as possible. Because think about it this way, right? If a hotel gets a bunch of bad reviews for like varying issues, it's tougher for them to also like work on those issues. It's harder to pinpoint them. But if a bunch of guests start going up to staff and really being clear with them about like what the issues are, it's way more likely that the hotel is going to take those issues seriously. One, because it's kind of considered a higher bar to tell the staff directly. But two, you're just making sure that the staff directly get that communication and relay that to them directly. So I think if you actually want to be a better hotel guest and to improve the state of hotels, you should, in certain cases, complain, because that's the only way for the hotel to actually improve. You don't necessarily have to ask for compensation, but you should bring up an issue when you see it. That's actually the right thing to do, because think about all the other guests that are paying the same amount of money. They may be having the same issues and may not want to bring it up. So I think, basically, as a summary, at hotels, when you have legitimate issues that you do legitimately think are detracting from your stay, you should, in a kind, constructive manner, bring it up to the appropriate hotel staff. And if you do feel that compensation is entitled, you should ask for it in a nice, caring way, and to be clear what you expect, what you would like that compensation to be. If you're not clear about it, that's fine, but just don't be surprised if it's not exactly what you had in mind. You could, so just keep that in mind. So, and that in the long run is what, you're paying for that. That's part of the reason you're paying all this money if you're staying at a luxury hotel to pay for it, because that is part of the service standard, and they're supposed to be giving you a luxurious experience at luxury hotels. So I hope that all makes sense. I hope you've enjoyed today's solo episode. Next week, Sherwin will be back on the podcast. And yeah, if you want to connect with an elite group of war travelers, check out the Discord group at the link in the description, 100% for free. And also, if you do end up applying for any credit cards, you please use one of our affiliate links also in the description. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps us out so much you have no idea. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.